The Plan Commission meeting of June 28, 2016 is called to order. I'll proceed with roll call.
Mr. Foster?
Here.
Mr. Holman?
Here.
Ms. Lazaris?
Here.
Mr. Pearson?
Here.
Mr. Mills? Mr. Schwark? And Mr. Magnuson previously informed staff that he'd be absent this evening.
Whoever got the sound system working, it's terrific. I can hear.
That's wonderful. Okay. All right, well, thank you. It's marvelous. Item number 3 is correction and/or approval of the minutes of May 24, 2016. Is there a motion concerning the minutes?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. I'll go ahead with a roll call vote on the minutes.
Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Ms. Lazaris?
Aye.
Mr. Pearson?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay. Item number 4, question and public comment. The public may address the commission at this time regarding items on the agenda unless the item is the subject of a public hearing. If your comments pertain to a public hearing, please hold your comments until the hearing. We do have one public hearing this evening. Item number 5, amendment to the sign code to achieve content neutrality in the regulations. Public comment may also be made at this time on items that are not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting. The state's open meeting law discourages action by the commission on items not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. State your name and address when starting your comments. Also, in the sign-in sheet at the podium, are there any public comments at this time? Okay. All right, seeing and hearing none, we go on to item number 5, public hearing, sign ordinance. And to start the public hearing first, I'll ask our consulting planner, Dustin Wolf, to review where we have been and give an overview of where we are today.
Okay, thank you. Just a reminder, we did discuss this or introduce this last month to the commission and members of the public. This sign code update is not being spearheaded by the city for reasons of just making changes to the code, specifically related to a recent, meaning 2015, federal Supreme Court ruling in relation to a case down in Arizona where some temporary signage and some directional signage was evaluated, and the Supreme Court determined that if you have to read the sign to determine what type of sign it is therefore content-based, and municipalities for a long time have not been allowed to regulate signage based on content. So, for example, a political sign, you'd have to read the sign to determine that it has a political message. We can no longer identify it as a political sign, so we need to make changes to our code as such. The same holds true for directional signage. So in, out, drive-through, etc., you need to read those signs to determine what kind of sign it is. So again, this federal Supreme Court ruled that we can't regulate signs in that manner anymore, so we have made some very specific changes to the sign code to ensure that such signs are still allowed in the community, and then to make it clear what the regulations are for them and how they're handled from a permitting and permanency perspective.
Okay. All right. All right, well, thank you. Thank you. The public hearing is open. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on the amendments that are geared to content neutrality in the sign code? Okay. There is, by sight and listening, there are no comments, and so we will close the public hearing and go on to item number 6, discussion recommendation on sign ordinance. And you all received the draft. Are there any comments on the draft? And we had discussed things last time, and that this draft is reflecting our discussion from May. I only actually had just one item, and Certainly. It was a new from last month. It's on page 6-1, of
that's
the
it, huh?
draft.
Yep.
And it's under Section 10.6.3, General Signage and Iconic Display Regulations, under A5, where it reads, "No off-premise signs as defined in Section 10.1.12 shall be permitted except as provided within the right-of-way of Interstate 94 per applicable state of Wisconsin statutes." And then it continues on by saying, "or allowed by conditional use per Section 10.9.22. And looking at the rest of it, my opinion is that possibly we might consider not having the last part, "or allowed by conditional use." Because, we are going to later talk about a proposed type of off-premise sign. And I'm thinking, if we could remove the conditional use, I think that would be all right. I don't think it's necessary
Okay.
to, look at that by conditional use.
Okay. I'll make that revision if it's agreed to by the,
If that seems all right to the plan
Seems all right.
commissioners, I would just, what I'm saying is I'm recommending to strike the last phrase in number 5 where it reads, "or allowed by conditional use per Section 10.9.22, to let that last part go, keeping the rest of the sentence.
Is there a reason why you put it in to begin
Well,
with?
because it's just too, because if it's off, we use conditional uses for specific properties, and I think there's too many, I think you run into some difficulties, and you could even get into arbitrariness by tacking this on, because, it wouldn't necessarily be for a specific property. Now, if it might be off premise on private property, but then, who is the owner, who's the I think we're getting into too many issues, and in my view, I think conditional uses should be for an on-premise application of some sort, rather than some off-premise item.
Nope, that makes
That was
sense.
just my opinion on that.
Makes sense to me.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, no. Okay. All right, but that's all I had.
Yeah, as you recall, we did walk through a series of changes last month.
Yeah.
Mrs. Zareth brought in some other changes. We've incorporated some of those. Just to summarize them very quickly, we've changed some of the definitions subtly to comply with the Supreme Court ruling. We have stricken some other definitions altogether because they define political signs and such, directional signs. And we've gone to primary signs and auxiliary signs. So a large sign and an auxiliary sign, which is a subordinate type sign, meaning it's smaller. You don't have to read it to see that it's smaller.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we made some corrections within the text as it related to, mostly it was temporary signs that were you had to read them to identify that it was a real estate sign or a political sign or a directional sign or something. So we've cleaned that up, and properties are just allowed a certain amount of square footage for temporary signs, and we've left it at that.
Okay. Plan commissioners, do you have any other, do you have any comments about where this stands now?
Seems clean to me.
No.
Seems clear, clean.
Okay. Is anyone ready to make a motion concerning this, this draft?
Yeah. I'll make a motion to accept the draft as presented.
Okay. Did you want to go along with that small change?
Yeah, incorporating the changes we talked about.
Okay. All right. And then, so this ends up being I actually, I'm kind of remiss here. I should have, emailed or something, because ideally there'd be a resolution, but, so this is actually what we're doing is actually recommending to the city council the amendments that are herein. That says kind of what we're doing. So if it can be set forth in a resolution of some sort, that would be, or a motion, that would be probably
Would you highlight it in
Fine.
the ordinance, Vicki? And the change? Well, to present it to the council, how would we?
Well, actually, it would be an ordinance, that you would
Yeah.
present an ordinance, but
Yeah,
then we would
be
have a
presenting
motion.
the ordinance, and certainly Mr. Foster could fill the council in on what the Plan Commission's determination
Okay.
was for its recommendation. And historically, if the motion has enough detail within the minutes, we could
Mhm.
go with that as
Okay.
being the motion.
All right.
Unless you really want us to.
No,
put together
that
something.
should be fine, because, no, as I'm thinking about it now, and you're talking about it too, I think that would be sufficient. That
I
should be
think
fine.
so.
Okay,
I agree, so I'll second it then.
okay. So moved and seconded to recommend approval of these amendments to the council. Any further discussion? All right, well, hearing none, then I'll call for a roll call vote.
Mrs. Harris?
Yes. Aye.
Mr. Pearson?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay, then we go on to item number 7, discussion on wayfinding signage provisions. Now, in the May meeting, it came up, someone at the May meeting was asking about whatever happened to the discussion we had, at the time of the code rewrite a couple of years ago, when we had the meeting to talk about the sign code, the public meeting on that, and what happened with, where that was left about, the discussion about what about signage that could point to businesses or things that are going on that are not close in, that are not easy to see when one drives past the commons area and the most central part of downtown. And at the time we said, well, we just left it where it could come back in by way of a proposal. And so then I said, well, why don't I just make some phone calls, and then we can maybe go from there. So then I did meet, as I mentioned, I did meet with Katie Anderson with the Chamber of Commerce, and Katie Otto with Main Street, and also with Pat Doyle, who had been at that earlier meeting 2 years ago and had an interest in talking about that subject. And so I met with the three of them on June 17th. And for the meeting, I came with some language that I drafted, some proposed language to, as it were, enable the coming forward of a sign program by an entity who wished to propose something to the city. And so that's what is in front of us now as a discussion. And Kate Anderson is here from the chamber, and so, if she has something she wants to say about it, I think we could just take care of it right away, and I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules for her to comment whenever she wishes during this discussion. Do I have a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Okay, well, the formality is taken care of, so whenever you want, you could just jump in, just make sure we can hear you, and that would be fine. So that's where it was left, and I would open up now to discussion with staff and commissioners. You have, first of all, the draft language here, and be good time to see what you think of it, and staff too, if you, whatever comments you have on that would be very helpful, because like I say, this is a draft, and as a way to, an effort to enable such a proposal to come forward.
I think it's a good idea to have the council kind of overseeing it, presuming that an organization like the Chamber or the Main Street Program have been spearheading this, have been representing their constituency, if you will. The only kind of questions that I have that relate to it is location. Is it presumably to be in the public right-of-way? Or I think it gets a little muddier when you start looking at private property. If it's in the downtown setting, by and large, it's going to be somewhere either by a sidewalk or by a roadway. So I think the assumption that it's going to be in the public right-of-way, I just didn't want to open the door for some organization to come in, a civic organization, and say, and I don't mean to pick, first one jumps in my head, the Lions. They come in and they want to have a signage program that directs them to all these different things that are important to them or whatever, and they want to put them on private property. So those are the concerns. I just look kind of bigger picture. The council certainly has the ability to approve or deny this stuff, but I think the assumption is it would be in the public right-of-way or on public land. I'm kind of looking at Attorney Schmidt on that.
Yeah, the city council has previously adopted a wayfinding signage program, and that was working with the Main Street program for a lot of the signs that you already see in the public right-of-way that basically say what the entity is that's being given directions, and then an arrow, and they're all over the city, like down Main Street, both north and south, and I think there might be some in the downtown area too. And that was as part of a program that, if I remember right from the policy, the Main Street program funded the signage and presented where they wanted to locate them, and the city council approved those locations and actually the text of the signs themselves, and then city crews actually put them in place rather than someone who maybe doesn't deal with signs doing it. My recollection of the wayfinding signage policy right now does not include commercial properties unless it is something that's so vague that it would give the general idea but not the specific business name. And I don't think that's what you're really looking for here, because this is to do away with, my impression is to do away with the sidewalk signs, at least the ones that are popping up all over that are away from businesses, to try to alleviate their concerns on how they can direct people to their property that maybe isn't right on the triangle downtown. And we could modify the wayfinding signage program to address that, because I'm sure that the individual businesses that would want to take advantage of it would want their name on the sign, like we'll use Mr. Doyle as an example, Doyle's Dogs, and then an arrow. But we wouldn't want to have it go so wide open that you can start putting logos, individual advertising messages, that sort of thing. It would be mostly identification. This is the place and this is the direction that you go to find it. And that would be what wayfinding signage is. So if either Main Street or Chamber or some other organization within the city wanted to take that on, it wouldn't be that difficult for us to modify the wayfinding signage program that was adopted by resolution of the council at the time that the council would be looking at this to add this to it. because, yeah, it'll take some work to have a program like this put together by whoever wants to do it, but it's not insurmountable. And the locations, hopefully, would be something that would be supported by both the city and the individual businesses, because otherwise, why are we doing it? So, but, you know, there would just be that extra step of fixing the wayfinding signage program that already exists to allow for this.
I like the enabling legislation, and then let the entities hammer out all the details and bring it to the council to evaluate.
Right. Okay. All right, well,
I guess I just want to make sure that we're trying to limit it to public right-of-way, that someone's not coming in and wants wayfinding signage that's off-premise, and, right? That would be my concern. When I say off-premise, on private property.
Well, that
Okay.
could be easily handled by modifying the definition of wayfinding sign to include that's located in the public right-of-way.
Okay, could you say an off-premise sign located in a public right-of-way? You want to say it that way?
Yeah, I think something
Okay.
along those lines.
And somewhere we would want to get to the concept that they have to be at approved locations, so that we don't get into disputes about whether we're advertising on state highway, that sort of thing.
Vision corridors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe an off-premise sign located in public right-of-way at approved locations coordinated by the city or organization approved by the city.
Okay, well, that sounds great. Okay, so it would then read for this definition, an off-premise sign located in public right-of-ways at approved locations, coordinated by the city, so on and so forth. It would read that way then. Okay. And what about the other paragraph? Does anyone have any comments on that, and putting it where this is here? This is at the end of this list of sign prohibitions and limitations.
I think it going along with the definition, I don't think we have to add to number 7 at all, because it,
Okay.
you know, it takes us back to the definition.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that it's clear, these are public signs. These are not, I mean,
Right.
this is the
right.
city, is a city program that is implemented by the city and approved by the city for locations within the public right-of-way. We want to make sure it's clear that this is not something for,
Advertising.
yes,
Right.
exactly. This is to assist those businesses that aren't located on the main roads, that, to help pedestrians in some cases, or just travelers, be able to find them a block or two off.
Be something similar to on the interstate where you see a blue sign informational
Yes.
to begin
Yeah.
with,
Yes.
listing a number of businesses that would
Yes.
be on that exit with an arrow right or left, right? I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll come up with something creative.
Yeah,
Nice
there's going to
looking.
be enough conversations on their end about the kind of details.
And then
Oh,
after you,
yeah,
after you
yeah.
after you get it
That's
developed and people start realizing that it's, in that certain font and whatever, they're gonna look for them here and there, and
Mhm.
it'll make more sense.
Right, and what I like about Ms. Lazaris's proposal is that it, unless the city's doing it independently, it does require an organization to coordinate it, so that we don't have individual businesses or entities or somebody who wants to advertise something, just thinking that they can come and say, okay, I want a sign here or there, and, you did it for somebody else, you have to do it for me. It should go through, whether it's Main Street program or chamber, whoever's going to take it on, it should go through that organization. Sort of like how Main Street handles our farmers market. The city doesn't make all those decisions about which vendors and where they're going to be located, but Main Street does that.
Yeah,
And it's something in that order, I think.
I concur with Vicky. That there's already signs directing people from the interstate to downtown.
Yeah.
Now you're getting to the issue of, well, I'm a downtown business, but I'm not located right on the commons, and so that's where you need some additional direction. The goal is not to have signage out in front of, well, it's Walgreens or McDonald's that say, Doyle's Dogs, and then down the road. No, you get people to the downtown, and then you go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me too. Okay.
And that'll save the council a lot of bickering,
Well,
or complaining from the
They don't have to be the
public.
bad guys, but let the organizations work with their constituency
Right.
to come up with the rules and how it's going to work and present it to, well, both the plan commission and the council ultimately.
Yeah, and there's an existing policy, so that could be built on to accommodate this new thing here. And so then what we would have then going forward, it would just be an additional definition in the sign code. There wouldn't be anything else.
Right.
Okay, that sounds good.
So who then would be responsible as far as timelines for additions, removals, things like that? How do we see that working out? Would that be,
I'd imagine they would, if they wanted changes from their own kind of sign plan, that they would have to come back to the plan commission and the council to. I hope they have the foresight to look ahead at maybe some additional spaces or something, but
yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to feel that out as it goes.
yeah, I agree.
And it's possible if the parameters of how the wayfinding signage is going to be approved by the city council, it might be possible to write into that policy what the rules are for such, as Mr. Foster said, about changes, or you need to add a new sign here or whatever, that if there are rules laid out by the council in that written policy, then it could become an administrative matter, so they don't have to come to the council meeting to get specific approval. I think that could be worked out and
Right.
make it easier for the thing to be able to be changed as needed.
Right. Good idea.
That sounds good. Okay, so for our purposes, then we'd just be looking at a public hearing on adding this definition.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about for item number 7? Okay. All right. And then I'm assuming that the chamber and the Main Street will coordinate with Vicki on the policy and so on.
Yeah, probably the first thing that's going to have to be decided between the chamber and Main Street is who's doing it.
Okay.
But they work well together. I'm sure they'll come up
Oh,
with
yeah,
that.
yeah, very well. Very
And
well indeed.
and then my role in it won't be that extensive. It's mostly to see that they've got all their pieces put together of their plan. And then I could modify the policy and present it to the council, and then the council could massage it from there if they want to make other changes.
Okay.
I think and then the details will be reviewed at staff level by the city manager, the engineer, and the
Yeah.
planner about when they've selected some locations and
Mhm.
sign types, and make sure that the
That
sight
sounds-
lines are preserved.
Okay, well, that sounds good. All right, well, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, then we'll move on to the next item, 8, recommendations for future agendas. Anything from Plan Commission, anything coming up the staff wants to report at this time?
It's the high months of summer. People are all building stuff. They already have their approvals.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything new.
Okay. All
Things
right.
are quiet.
Yeah, it is pretty quiet.
We get the election over with, then we'll go back to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we come to item number 9, adjournment.
So move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second?
It's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed also signify. We're adjourned.